How did the horses get there?
Seriously, you're going live. Were you just trying to slip that in without me noticing?
No, nothing like that. Tell me about the horses.
The horses on Sable Island. I think they. I'm basically just going to make something up, but so Wikipedia will obviously have better information. But I think they're from, Spanish traders or something. Being shipwrecked there. Like, obviously they were introduced. The wild horses don't generally roam around in the middle of the Atlantic, but yeah. Anyway, they're very beautiful with long, shaggy manes and nothing to eat but grass.
But yes, and horses themselves. Hello, dearies. Welcome to Undersampled Radio, episode 49. We're here today at the Misinformation Center of Undersampled Radio headquarters, where we are talking to an expert in the field of Sable Island, his name is Matt Hall. Sable Island, if you don't know, is an uninhabited island about 100 miles southeast of Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
And it apparently has wild horses roaming around.
Yeah, and at least I think a couple of hundred shipwrecks. I mean, it was very bad for shipwrecks back in the day before GPS. And
it was a glacially formed island, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So apparently it's hard to get to because it's protected by the Nova Scotian government. I mean, that is, of course, unless you accidentally wreck your ship into it, then you're there.
Yeah, and I think, it may even be protected by the federal government. Like I say, yeah, the Sable Island National Park Reserve. So it's a federal thing. And like I say, I don't actually know how to visit it. I think it'd be an amazing place to visit, but don't know.
One of the most interesting, for me, parts about Sable Island is that it's not completely imaged by Google satellite imagery. The ends are sort of clipped off by their algorithm. So that's cool. There's not a whole lot of places left like that in the world.
No, right.
Huh? Can you think of any other ones?
Yeah, it always surprises me how even places you would think would be very sensitive, they seem to be imaged just fine, military bases and stuff like that. Yeah, I guess the Arctic, things maybe fall apart because of the projection a bit around the poles and things, but no, I can't remember the last time I found somewhere I wanted to see that I couldn't. I mean, the coast has always been a bit of a problem because you'd like to see sometimes sort of tidal flats. And like, I remember looking off the coast of Georgia and places like that where there's some really beautiful estuaries. And you feel like you can see things in the sea, maybe because the water is very shallow or maybe there's sediment plumes there. And obviously Google doesn't care about those. I think you get the same thing around the Mississippi Delta. You'd like it to go a little bit further offshore.
Mm-hmm.
I've also looked for oil rigs and things before, but they're all I assume that all of that is just because they don't want to be storing lots of high-res images of the sea.
Right.
Not because of anything else.
Except I was just when we were talking with Brendan last week, I looked up Planet Labs on Google, and they actually are initiating or already have initiated a project to image the sea surface, and it's at like meter resolution.
Okay, so that's cool. But actually, given the choice, I think maybe I'd rather just have the sea floor, like just take the sea away and have the high-res bathymetry.
Sure.
Yeah. Maybe even colored in with some clever algorithm.
And a jet color map.
No, so that it's sort of natural color.
Oh.
Mud. And there was an amazing, I'll have to look for the link, but there's a really cool visualization floating around yesterday, animated visualization of aerosols in the atmosphere that I think NASA put out. But it's well worth Googling up if you can be bothered. But yeah, basically, I think I saw a GIF version of it. So it's just a globe spinning, but with these aerosols. The aerosols were carbon, dust, were salt, like sea salt. That was a surprising one to me. And I think the other one was sulfates, but I'm not totally sure actually from memory. But anyway, it's very nicely done. NASA's pretty good at that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a cool site.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, called Lance. There's MODIS imagery. This is you know what I'm talking about?
No, yeah, I've heard of MODIS.
Satellite imagery of various pieces of the world. So that's cool. Check that out if you haven't seen it. We have a lot of show notes to get through today, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you have a printout there?
I always print it out.
Yeah, I know. This is a technology show. What are you doing? Don't you have 7 iPads or something at your house?
You don't really do iPads.
Spare 1 tablet?
Yeah, you'd think, right? Yeah, I need a kind of multimedia booth. But anyway, for now, a piece of paper will do.
Okay.
I could go full digital and scan it in. And then look at the PDF on my phone.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah. So
I see a note in there about the tensor to tensor library. Is that you? Did that come from you?
It did, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, so Steve posted this in Software Underground this morning. It looks pretty cool. I clicked on the link there, which is a news article by TechCrunch about tensor to tensor, and I wanted the real thing, so I just GitHub searched tensor to tensor, and I ran into the wrong thing. Okay. Which was kind of cool too. It was, and of course I don't have the author's reference, but it's the first hit on GitHub. It is a image translation network, like or not. I said that wrong. It's not an image translation network. Strike that from the record. It is a sequence to sequence network, and it's much like the encoder decoder stuff that we were doing a while back with digit translation. So that's cool, but that's not tensor to tensor. So why don't you tell us about what tensor to tensor is?
Well, I don't know much about what it is, but a very quick reading of that article suggested that they're basically just trying to make TensorFlow a little bit more accessible, make it easier to swap models in and out, and easier to swap data sets in and out, which like I wrote in the show notes, sounds a bit like an attempt to sort of scikit-learnify TensorFlow, not to sort of use scikit-learn's API exactly, but the philosophy of being able to very quickly change architectures or change data sets, I think is really cool. And maybe a little bit like what Keras tries to do, which is to sort of abstract Theano or TensorFlow deep learning libraries, again, with a scikit-learn style philosophy, So I think stuff like that's great. We need high-level things so that you can go and try things easily without a whole bunch of documentation reading or flailing around getting nothing done. But maybe it's not something for the person who's already deep into TensorFlow.
Right. Or if you enjoy flailing around.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes flailing around is fun.
What is this survey you have on here?
So Paige Bailey, who's an awesome geophysics / sort of big data analytics, machine learning young professional at Chevron. She's also, she goes along to hackathons, and she's just really into anything analytics, and is putting together a series of tutorials, and I think leading to, well, I think it's going to be a blog for now, so maybe I don't know exactly where it's leading, but a series of tutorials on machine learning and related topics. And so she's put up this survey. It's on her Twitter feed. She's called Dynamic Web Page, page with an I, on Twitter, and so you can find a link to it there, and the link's in the show notes as well. It's a Survey Monkey. She's basically asking for opinions on, what kind of topics people are interested in and what she should do first, and what kind of whether people want to see videos or read blog posts or what they'd like to consume. And for every response she gets to the survey, she's committed to doing a blog post / video / some kind of installment of this awesome sounding tutorial series. Yeah. So
could be a lot of posts.
Potentially, she may have let herself in for the next 20 years worth of spare time. But anyway, it sounds like a really cool project. So show some support if you're interested in that kind of thing from a legit geophysicist, and check out her survey.
Cool. I'll do it right after this show. Again, the link is in the show notes if you'd like to do it. We also have a note here about Google object detection.
Yes. Yes.
Hasn't that been a thing for 5 years?
It's been a thing for 5 years, and I think it's just basically getting better and better. So they've just open sourced. I don't know if this is like, bicycle companies bringing out their last year's Tour de France bicycle. This is like maybe Google releasing one of the more recent iterations of its object detection stuff. But it's, reading their stuff or reading the PR around it sounds like it's pretty good at what it does. I haven't played a lot with object detection. One of the hackathon projects was using some of the object detection in OpenCV. So it was kind of on I noticed it kind of because of that, because I thought their project was really cool.
So where was that? Where was that project?
So nice segue. So 10 days? No, I don't know. Nearly 2 weeks ago was the hackathon, the long-awaited subsurface hackathon on machine learning in Paris, France, and it was pretty awesome. It was at least an 11 on the awesome scale, and 13 projects, 60 plus, actually more than 60 participants, lots of croissants. A good time was had by all. It was a really good weekend. So still sort of coming down from it, and I wrote so many notes on the plane home, like of stuff to write about, think about, follow up on, plan for the future. I feel like that event is going to keep me and hopefully us and hopefully lots of people busy for the foreseeable future.
Good. Well, I'm glad to see that you're so excited about it. It's been many years worth of.
I feel like I saw you there.
Oh, I was there. I mean, as you mentioned, I think everybody who attended or participated in any way, even those of the participants that weren't there, felt the buzz and were sort of inspired by a lot of the projects. It was my second Agile hackathon, and it was the first one where I was contributing a lot of time and energy to the event, and it was awesome, man. It was amazing to see new hackers learning and seasoned hackers learning, and I mean everybody by the end of the weekend learned 10 new skills and had, just like you, a huge list of notes and ideas and things to try in the coming weeks. So my hackathon project, which never came to fruition, unfortunately, was to tell Alexa to record some voice, convert it to a segue, and then tweet it out. It didn't work out because apparently Alexa does not allow you to send raw audio recording files up to the cloud because of privacy concerns. But anyway, I learned a lot. And in fact, right before this episode started, I was working on the second iteration of that project, which is an intelligent Twitter bot, which learns what some Twitter users are into and then tweets back at them in the style of their own voice. So prepare yourself.
That's not creepy at all.
Because you're high on that list of targeted users, of victims for the Twitter bot, which I'm hoping will be live and unleashed by the end of the weekend.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I've tried a couple of times to build Twitter bots and never actually deployed any. I've got at least half a dozen Twitter bot accounts waiting for their instructions. And
what's your favorite?
I'm not sure where I've always got stuck. Well, I think the sort of bad rainbow bot, I still think will be quite good fun. That basically watches people's feeds for images that use the rainbow or jet type spectrum color bar, and sort of publicly chastises them for it, but but also takes their image and fixes it, basically re-rendering the data with a with a sort of perceptually linear color bar, and tweeting it back at them, going, I fixed it for you.
Yep.
It's pretty
awesome.
It'd be a pretty annoying thing to get to be on the receiving end of, but
just
part of the
most of the
crusade.
Twitter bot. I think most of those things end up being pretty annoying.
Potentially.
Yeah, I mean, just like anything, it's just the infrastructure and the plumbing take 10 times the amount of coding time that the fun stuff takes. So
right.
I finished all the fun stuff already, and now I'm just working on automation and data handling.
Yeah, I mean, potentially I think doing something with a particular user isn't too bad, because you're not having to suck down a huge amount of data. Like the rainbow bot would have to basically watch all of Twitter, whereas your mimicry bot can just watch a single person
at a time.
Much.
But it's gonna it's gonna switch users automatically.
Yeah, nice. So you got trigger words.
It's gonna be awesome.
Words that send it over the edge. Yeah, I mean, it'd be fun to do a sort of social media themed hackathon. Actually, someday might not make a bad theme.
Just let me. Let's pause here while you write this down with your pen on your paper.
I already have a list of about 400 potential themes of hackathons, but yeah, sure. All right, I'll write it down.
Good, thank you. While Matt does that, I will, with a pen, with a disposable fountain pen.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Did I tell you about this? Did I tell you about those disposable fountain pens?
You did. I don't know if it was this one. Was it these?
Wait, zoom out. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Look. Well, I must have bought this after our conversation.
Got one right there. It's similar. Varsity.
Nice.
So in case you guys missed it,
a little bit better than you.
In case you guys missed it, so in case you're left-handed and you're listening to this show, you should buy one of these, a pack of disposable fountain pens. They're the only pens, and I searched for years, which are acceptable for writing as a left-handed person. The ink dries fast enough not to get on your hand, so I love them. And literally, this is the only pen I use now. A while ago, I bought 100 packs of these things.
So where do you hold where does your hand go when you're writing? It goes do you write from the side or from below, like a right-handed person usually seems to?
Oh, I dropped my pen, so I can't show you. Hold on.
Steady.
This is good. This is good for a radio show because no one can see it. I don't know. I hold it like this. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so more or less from the side.
From the side.
Because a lot of righties seem to write from underneath.
Yeah.
But
no.
I write from above.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can position things properly, but basically I kind of wrap my hand around like that.
Oh, yeah, that's bad. How's your carpal tunnel?
Well, basically, yeah, it's Like that actually did hurt quite a bit, but I don't normally sit like that. But yeah, it's good. Thanks. I don't write very much, to be honest.
Just this is a special time. Undersampled Radio is a special
Yeah,
occasion.
It's the only time I need paper.
Can you, now that we've completely derailed the hackathon conversation, can you tell us what you thought about the hackathon and what didn't work?
Well, I mean, the list of, I didn't write a list of things that did work because nearly everything worked. Worked better than I thought it was going to. So just, I can run off a few, I guess, off the top of my head. Getting people into Slack early, I think, was a help. I think sending people the list of potential projects, I think, was a help, although I haven't circled back with a lot of people about that, but seemed to be good. The theme sure worked out. I think the theme of machine learning was a big reason why we sold out the event and had 60 people there on the day. It worked out really well co-hosting the event with Total. They were awesome hosts. Their venue was beautiful and perfect for what we needed. All the rest of the logistics basically worked out. The Saturday morning of getting people together into teams worked fabulously. We were coding. I mean, everyone was basically ready to go by like 9:59, which was a record. We've gone till 11 or past 11 before. The boot camp went really well. In fact, I'd love to make the boot camp even more successful. It just scares me a little bit because at some point it becomes as much work as the hackathon itself. So maybe we need a bit more of a team approach to pull that off in future, I think. So the things that I kind of, wrote down to think about a bit more carefully next time were, well, the remote participation was one that you boldly took on and
boldly fumbled.
I don't think you fumbled it at all. I think it was you were much bolder than I would have been in an experiment. So I appreciated that because I'd have done it with 2 people and you were like, no, let's do 8. Right. That was the goal. And I think we finished with 4, I think. I kind of lost track a little bit, but so I would say it was pretty awesome that we had Martin in South Africa and Alfredo in Peru, and these people were like contributing to their teams in a very real way. So I mean, I was impressed and more than satisfied by just the fact that it worked out. But I think we just need to think, and maybe it's actually a scaling back of the technology requirement. I think we maybe overestimated what people really needed. They don't need to be connected to tablets because Slack and Hangouts and stuff are good enough. But we can, anyway, so that's one thing. I felt like the mentoring, I guess I went into the event thinking, I hope we don't overwhelm the teams with like too much mentoring, like, hey, let me mentor you, and basically getting in their way. But I wonder if we went a bit too far the other way, because I wondered at the end if we hadn't let a couple of teams kind of spin off into directions that maybe a little bit of input could have helped focus them a bit. So I feel like we could be more help to some teams. Anyway, that's another note I made. We normally I finish off and I'm like, because there's 4 teams and 4 projects, I can like write these things down, email the individuals and say, hey, can I get a screenshot? And if you've got a repo, can you point me to your repo? And normally I end up with a really good overview of what everybody did. And this time, it was chaos, yeah, basically. And I have no record of what some teams even did. I have no idea. I have no screenshots. I wasn't focused on the presentations at the end, so I can't even speak to kind of what they attempted. And I feel like we need to get better at that, but I'm not sure how yet. I think we'll I'll send a bunch of emails and we'll figure it out in the end. But that felt a bit different, I guess, this time. And like I say, I think just a function of having so many teams. The under $1,000 TV studio that you basically single-handedly constructed out of pieces of sellotape and a couple of Amazon fires at the end was pretty spectacular. And it's so cool. Like, we've got all this media from the end, from the presentations, really good audio, this video where you were like being a TV producer and switching around, and basically you were just at the mercy of the not totally ideal Wi-Fi at the end there. Some really good B-roll from the GoPro. It's pretty awesome. I think the next iteration of that, like knowing that we're going to try something like that ahead of time, assembling a little bit more equipment, like maybe a lav mic and a couple of other bits and bobs, and I think you can pull off like a totally professional job for under $1,000, which is pretty awesome.
Yes, indeed.
Like, multiple videos, high quality audio. Another thing is like I'm unsure how to follow up with some of the teams, and I kind of want to offer them support and facilitate a conversation with sponsors or partners or whoever wants to talk to these people. I feel like we could do more to it's not to intermediate those conversations, but to make sure that those conversations happen if people want them to happen, kind of thing. Because I think opportunities came out of this hackathon. Some of the projects were spectacular, and I guess we need to feel our way through how to just make sure awesome things happen. Yeah, give them the best chance of happening anyway. And then the other thing that I just sort of made some notes about was like how to bring this to far more people. You know, how to do one of these in, I don't know, Stavanger, Jakarta, Houston.
This is the franchise idea that we were talking about with Sue Webb a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, but yeah, yeah, exactly, to reference that.
Let me just repeat what we were talking about a couple weeks ago. So we were speaking with Dr. Sue Webb about her experience with the Africa Array Field School, and she mentioned to us that she had past students who became professors who were interested in setting up their own field schools, and so she gave them the tools, basically a script with how she ran her field school to enable them to run their own field school, and it would be cool to do that with the hackathon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they came to her field school, and so I feel like maybe, I don't know if people necessarily have to have been to the hackathon. I think they probably do. Maybe remote participation is enough, but I feel like being there is I don't want to call it a profound experience, but I mean, it is an experience that's hard to replicate or describe. Coupled with a kind of handbook, like our playbook, essentially, for what to think about ahead of time and when. And a lot of that already exists because I've already written a lot of it down over the last few years. Would basically equip someone to go off and do. So if someone's listening and thinks, yeah, I'd like to run a hackathon around subsurface stuff in my city or whatever, then get in touch, and maybe you can be the guinea pig for how we help spread this, because we don't have the bandwidth to go around doing a lot of these, or the human or financial resources, but I'm totally happy to share how we do them. So yeah, if you're listening thinking, oh, that sounds cool, then get in touch. Yeah, and there's not just sort of petroleum or even subsurface. I mean, I'm quite interested in what hackathons can do in corporate land, so inside of organizations, around all sorts of themes. I'm interested in what they can do in other kind of horizontals, if you like, geospatial, where they already do happen, of course, what can they do in things like geothermal? So I mean, there's all sorts of ways to scale this thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be just the same event over and over again. I think there are different communities and different things to attack. Another thing we haven't tried yet is sort of a hackathon around a particular technology, where you're actually hacking against a particular API or piece of open source software. Like they do something a little bit similar for Madagascar, and actually there's one coming up this year in Houston.
It's soon too, I believe.
Yeah, it's
the next
if
month.
It's not July, then it's August. It's at the University of Houston. It's called the Madagascar Working Workshop. It's Carl Schleicher and Sergei Fomel and those guys, and I think they have about 30 people or so along at this thing, and it's a week, if I remember rightly, and it's laptops open, hacking around, and I think this year they're doing it on building tutorials, basically. So they've got this kind of theme of hacking on this particular kind of content, which I think sounds fantastic, and so much. I mean, there's so many awesome bits of technology out there from there's OpenDetect, QGIS, FreeUSP, Seismic Unix, OpenSeasize, Madagascar, Pinoddy, Simpeg. All of these things would make a great centerpiece for a technology-specific hackathon or sprint or whatever. Yeah,
I'm in.
Sign me up.
So Evan Bianco, who was assisting at the hackathon, wanted to discuss a couple things here, and he wrote some notes for us today. He wanted to talk about what makes a great hackathon team, and sort of build maybe a list or a spreadsheet of ideas, which kind of highlights what makes a good hackathon team and good hackathon team members. And so I don't know, I'm hesitant to attack this question from the standpoint of the teams who won prizes at the end, right? Because everybody did seriously awesome projects. So I'm not sure how he wants to quantify highly successful hackathoners. But I will say that the most successful teams, or the teams with the best demos came with an idea, right? They had decided on a project. In many cases, they had started to build parts of gather a few people for the team, and really start thinking about the idea in quantitative terms before the event started.
That was the first thing I wrote down. Was it really makes a big difference if there's at least one person on the team who has real vision for a particular project,
right?
So that they've totally sort of internalized the problem that they're trying to solve and what would constitute a usable solution to that problem. And I'm not sure that it necessarily needs to have been decided on ahead of the day, because I think in the past we've seen stuff happen, really awesome projects come out that no one had thought much about before the day. But if there's got to be some kind of energy and buzz around that project, and people are kind of can see and feel almost what would make an awesome demo for the end, right? Because it's a project or a problem rather they're experiencing themselves, or that they've coached people through lots of times, or that kind of thing. That profound understanding is hard to you can't fake it, basically. The other people on your team don't necessarily need to get it to that degree, but someone needs to. Yeah.
So build a list of ideas before you show up and rank them into your favorite categories. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, maybe. Or again, even on the day, I think there's something about being, I don't know. I like the way that we got the teams together this time, right? With this kind of bazaar that we set up where if you had a project idea or something you felt strongly about, or even just a buddy and you kind of knew that you were a proto team, that you grabbed a whiteboard and described your project on it or used it as a gathering point. And then the kind of people who hadn't figured out what they wanted to work on yet wandered around and talked to people and looked at the projects and thought a bit about them. And if they were sort of feeling it, or if the team was like desperate to have their skills on their team or whatever, then they stuck with them. And eventually when they had 5 people, they went off and started coding. I think that worked really well.
Yeah, there are basically job ads out there in the middle of the floor, and there's a big room where everyone gathered on the first day, and teams with sort of semi-direction or an idea of what they wanted to work on literally wrote on a whiteboard, on a mobile whiteboard, looking for coder with Keras experience, and people would come around and shop themselves to the teams. It was very cool.
Yeah, and I loved how it, I guess I've seen mobile whiteboards before, but I thought it was really, really nice how a very basic piece of technology, a big whiteboard on wheels, actually became a kind of part of this organizational strategy. Like it was a really nice physical manifestation of something that you could have tried to do in a spreadsheet, right? Or a sort of, I don't know, so in a less dynamic way. I loved how it kind of modeled the process in meat space in 3D. Anyway, and low tech technology won out several times during the weekend.
That is true.
It also, like, some amazing things really about watching teams work. Like, first when I walked around the space, there were some tables that were very close together, and I thought, oh, they're probably a bit close. Like, I don't think a team is going to want to sit there and here, because they'll be right next to each other and it'll be really distracting. But they did sit right next to each other, and I don't think they were distracted at all. Like, once they were sort of turned inward in their little groups on their tables, they were in their own world, kind of thing. Like, I think you could stress quite a bit about the physical environment, but actually people just need somewhere to sit and somewhere to put their laptop and plug in for some power, and they're pretty happy.
Yep.
Like, almost complete, to the extent that they're almost oblivious to everything that's going on around them. I kind of love that, the intensity and of that high productivity zone that everybody gets into, because it's very rare to experience that in an office context. Like, individuals experience it, but you almost never have like a whole floor of people experiencing it at the same time. And
yeah, we definitely did. I was talking on to Alexa over and over again. I felt like I was going to interrupt people. Alexa, hey, blah, 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 blah. And then she would say, blah, 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 and no distraction. It was awesome. People were in the groove. How do you train for a hackathon? Evan says. This is okay. So this is an interesting question, because you have both participated in and run hackathons. So don't tell us about the Subsurface hackathon. Tell us about the hackathon you did in Canada a while back. How did you prep? How did you train for that hackathon?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, if you need kind of big back pockets. I think you need to have poked around a little bit with a lot of little pieces of technology, partly just to sort of open your eyes to what's around and the diversity and get used to the idea that basically every single thing you can think of, someone has done it. I mean, right? And to get away from the idea that at a hackathon, you're going to be writing hundreds of lines of code, because typically you don't have time to do that. And, it would just be super buggy and very difficult to do anything else like interact with your teammates and that kind of thing. So getting used to the idea of kind of hacking, like, I mean, that's kind of the point of hacking, right? Is to pull solutions together to build something else.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing how to use web APIs, so knowing how to make calls in Python to a web interface and make a GET request or a POST request and handle JSON when you get the contents of the request back, or when you need to package the contents of your request up. Like that's a key skill that isn't, most scientific programmers won't have come across that kind of way of interacting with software before, right? They're used to installing a library and figuring out its API locally. But web APIs are fantastic, and there are services out there to do all sorts of things like natural language processing or image recognition and this kind of thing. So I think that's a big one. It's important that at least a couple of people on every team know how to build a web server, I think, or deploy a web app on some kind of platform like Heroku or Python Anywhere or Elastic Beanstalk or Google App Engine or somewhere, so that you can, so basically going through a tutorial to set up a web app. So that's another one. Another one is a bit of JavaScript. Again, not everyone on the team needs to know JavaScript and HTML5, but someone needs to. 4 times out of 5 that your solution is going to involve a website or a web app. And if you're already programming in another language, it's not that big a deal to pick up JavaScript. It's a very forgiving, almost a too forgiving language. Yeah, it's pretty brutal, but you can do magical things with it. So it rewards study, unfortunately. Yeah, I know. It's gross. I mean, to me, the grossest thing about it is how forgiving it is. It's very hard to debug, because the browser just shrugs its shoulders and goes, "All right, I'll give it a go," and almost everything like doesn't explode. Unlike most programming languages, where you'll just get a syntax error if something doesn't work.
Yeah. So let me tell you about my experience and how I should have prepared, because this was my first hackathon. I don't want to say mentoring, but answering questions that teams were having. So I showed up thinking that I was going to be hacking. I mean, I thought that I was going to spend my weekend kind of like working on a project, or I don't know, maybe not working fully on a project, but working on maybe pieces of different projects. But instead, what happened a lot was that I got questions from teams who needed help with services, like background stuff to make their demos work or to make their data handling work.
Right.
And it was really instructive. I mean, it was like I had a question about making publicly addressable unique URLs for data access. And I'm like, wait a minute, like I know how to do that. No, wait. Hang on. Actually, how do I do that? So it took me 30 minutes to get an answer, a real good answer to them. And so in the future, if you're running a hackathon, if I was going to do the same thing where I was sort of helping out teams, I think I'd spend a week or two ahead of time brushing up on all the stuff that just or at least you think but you haven't used in a while.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, right? Because you don't really know what's going to come up on the day. Is it going to be like, I don't know, it could be anything, right? But handling logins properly, hashing, all these things that you are always going to have to look up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know what you mean. One other thing I'd say is there's a skill around. So I think I learned this skill when I worked at Landmark and did software demos twice a week. And there's something about always trying to fit things into a story kind of thing, like thinking about putting the demo first and like not worrying about how do I build my solution and then afterwards thinking, okay, how do we demo this? But right from the beginning, just thinking, what do I want to demo? And then build the demo.
Yeah.
So you sort of, especially in a hackathon, I mean, that's basically the only requirement, right? It doesn't.
Well, not just only in a hackathon. I mean, that's true of product.
Well, it's sales, yeah.
Development. Not just
It's
sales,
sort of,
but
yeah. It's sort of true
you,
product development too. You're right.
I was having a conversation with some folks yesterday about a product they want to develop, and they were talking about, well, let's everybody have kind of come up with some first steps and write them down in a feature list. And I'm like, wait a minute, folks, before we do that, we need to, you got to make a list of things that you want in the end. Like you want the end goals first, and then come up with a roadmap to get there. It's really easy, and I do it all the time, to set off in a direction only to realize that you're heading the wrong way.
Right. Totally. But the other thing about demos is not just to be thinking about them, but also to have two roads, trying to mispronounce roots, 2 roads to everything that you want to accomplish in a demo, so that if one of them doesn't work out, you have another way of achieving it or coping with the fact that it didn't work out.
I see.
There's something about contingency. So basically, you're not spending the whole time just panicking, but it's like, get something really easy working, and then that works, and then you can relax. And then the cool thing the way you really wanted to do it, you've got time to try it, and if it doesn't work, it's no big deal because you already solved it in a crap way. I think that's a good approach to. I don't know how you train for that, but there's a headspace to get into for hackathons that is, adaptable.
So I hope that worked out for you, Evan. I hope that answer was satisfying. Matt. Oh man, what are you reading?
So yeah, I mean, I came home through the UK. I got the Eurostar to London after the hackathon. Well, after EAGE actually, on the Thursday, and then I got the train up to Cambridge, and where I was visiting my family. My sister lives in Cambridge, and Cambridge has some pretty awesome bookshops. It's obviously a big university town, a very an indescribable feel to the place. Like I get this feeling a lot, even just visiting cities where you're like, whoa, like everyone's doing awesome stuff here. Like there's a very high level of productivity. People are rushing around. I know there's really cool, like it felt a bit like this in Silicon Valley, where it's like there's, Oracle and Amazon and Evernote and all these companies that, it's like, whoa, they're doing cool things. They're doing them really quickly and building a lot of value and all this. Well, you feel a bit like that in Cambridge too, but it's much more kind of just the awesome level of R&D and science that's going on there. Mm-hmm. Big science park. Obviously, the university has tons of stuff going on. Everyone seems very intelligent and studious and busy. And you're like, So it's kind of like, yeah, it's good. It's energizing feeling to visit anyway. Anyway, yeah, so there's a bookshop called Heifer's, which is like the university bookshop. I think it's run by one of the big chains now, but I love visiting that bookshop. It's got books on just ridiculous stuff. So you could spend probably 2 weeks in there browsing. Anyway, so I bought quite a few books. My suitcases were quite heavy when I came home. And the one that I'm reading first, the one that I dug into first, is called The 7 Pillars of Statistical Wisdom. And it's by Stephen Stiegel, who is at the University of Chicago. And it's basically sort of 7 core ideas in statistics, from kind of aggregation to information content, regression, and some other core ideas. 4 other core ideas to be precise. So I'm only like halfway through the second chapter, but I'm quite.
So you're still on idea number 1?
I think no. I've read the preface. I'm halfway through idea number 2.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So anyway, I like reading about statistics. I feel like there's a headspace with statistics, like there's a point where you kind of get something, you know what I mean? Like in signal analysis, there's a point where you sort of get what domains mean, and you get an intuitive feeling for these things that seem quite weird at first, like bandwidth or, spatial wavelength or whatever. Same in geology, like in sequence stratigraphy, say, where there's a lot of jargon and there's a lot of stuff to know and to learn and to kind of read about before you can start going, oh yeah, I get that now. I get the relationship between, I don't know, sediment supply and relative sea level change. It becomes internalized. And I've never really reached that point with any aspect of statistics. Like I still feel uncomfortable with a lot of it. I've never quite got to that point where I like intuitively grasp things and get a feeling for, oh yeah, because of the Poisson distribution, I get why you would need that kind of summation or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so I guess there's
is that
striving for that.
Is that because the field is so broad? I mean, if you
Maybe.
could list the sub disciplines of statistical analysis, it would be you could write a book just on that.
Yeah, and maybe it's too broad a field. Maybe it's sort of bits of statistics are more intuitively coherent than the whole. I don't know. This is another thing I have no intuition about. So I'm hoping that this book is one small rung on that ladder. Yeah. What about you?
Cool.
What are you reading?
I'm reading a few weeks ago we had Lindsay Hagee on the show, and she talked about Yuval Noah Harari's book *Sapiens*. Do you remember this? Okay, so
yeah, I remember her mentioning it.
So it's the name of the book is *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind*, in which the author goes through important aspects of human history and in a sort of a philosophical way. And I didn't read it. So I heard about it all over the place. Lindsay said it was awesome. It was on the Gates Notes list. So it was awesome. I mean, every NPR, I just kept hearing about it. And it is still on my sort of inbox. But the other day I was reading through a book, one of these book lists that I keep up with, and his next book, which is called Homo Deus, was on the list, which I'd never heard of before. And for whatever reason, it seemed more interesting. And here is literally the reason that I picked his new book over the old one. Okay. Old book title, *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind*.
Yeah.
New book, *Homo Deus: A Brief History of Tomorrow*. Which one of those things are you going to pick?
Yeah, fair enough.
I judged a book by its cover, and it is awesome.
So it's the futureness of it that you liked?
Yeah.
So that was the appeal.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought *A Brief History of Tomorrow* sounded really cool. But also I knew that it was going to be about the next evolution of humankind, based on what the first one was about. And it is fascinating. It's a 3-part book written. Well, I'm not going to spoil too much because you need to read it. It is really, really great. So I'm almost through the whole thing, and it's highly recommended.
So it's an attempt to predict the evolution of humans
into the next evolution, into the next species.
Okay.
Right. So we're talking about timescales. Well, he starts off by predicting timescales which are on the order of 30 years, and moves all the way through of timescales approaching the next
mega
species.
Years.
Yeah, maybe not mega years, but hundreds of kilo years.
So would it be a spoiler to tell us if AIs play into this?
No, it's not a spoiler at all. It's AIs are not necessarily the biggest focus of the book, but the sort of automation is.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Which is so it's really written in an interesting way. So without explicitly caring too much about how maybe artificially intelligent beings become, it's very important to the author to understand how the effects of today's automation progress into the future. It's really fascinating. So on your recommendation a while ago, I read that book, Superintelligence, by Nick Bostrom. Is that who wrote it?
Yeah.
And that book is actually referenced in the book I'm reading now, and but it's not completely correlated.
No. Okay.
Very awesome book. Read it.
That
man.
sounds cool. I just added it to my cart. I wanted we should probably just get Steve Purvis on the show at some point.
Cool.
But I wanted to mention a book that he mentioned several times while we were in Paris, because he probably won't be reading it anymore by the time we get to talk to him. And while I'm thinking about it, because I can't wait to read it myself, it's called Computer Science Distilled, Learn the Art of Solving Computational Problems, by Vlaston Ferreira Filho, who must be, I guess, from Brazil. And anyway, by Steve's account, it's awesome. Basically a sort of primer on computer science, or the highlights of computer science as a discipline, for people who didn't study it or skipped it or slept through those classes at university or whatever. And so he had nothing but high praise for it. So if you're looking for a way to sharpen up as part of your next hackathon training, maybe give that one a try.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you prepared to riddle me this for this episode.
Oh no.
Yeah. We've been apparently Riddle Me This is taking a break. Right. I actually spent about 20 minutes today looking through some riddles, which I was hoping would help us out. But
okay.
I didn't come up with any that were of Undersampled Radio quality.
No? Okay. That's bad.
So if anyone out there who's listening has a suggestion for a Riddle Me This, please send it our way, because Matt needs ideas.
Yeah, I do.
Sign us off, Matt.
That's it for this week. Well, that's awesome. I do like talking to you one-on-one. It's good. We'll get some good guests lined up. I know we've got a few in the pipeline, which is none of them quite manifested. So I'm looking forward to the next few shows. For now, though, it's time to say goodbye. It's getting very warm in this little room. Like, we haven't had a summer yet with these rooms that we built, and it's getting almost uncomfortable. So I'm quite glad it's the end of the show. Hopefully we'll chat next week. And until then, from me, goodbye.
And from me, goodbye.